I have to admit, I've been doing a bit of doom scrolling lately. You know the routine.
Oh, I know it well.
You open the news app, you click on the real estate section, and you immediately regret it.
It is a stressful habit, I'll give you that.
Mm.
The headlines haven't exactly been cheerful.
Cheerful. They're practically apocalyptic,
Yeah.
specifically if you're looking at the United States or, the UK right now.
Right.
The prevailing narrative is just pure panic. Interest rates spike, and suddenly buyers are backing out at the closing table, contracts are collapsing left and right, and sellers are just scrambling because the market they thought they had, it's just evaporated.
It creates a very, very dramatic picture. It paints a world where confidence is thinning by the hour and everyone is running for the exits.
Yeah.
It's a market defined by fragility.
Exactly. Fragile.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting and why we're here today. If you take those same headlines, that same logic of rates go up, sky falls down, and you try to apply them to Jamaica,
It doesn't work.
you are going to be completely wrong.
You'd be looking at a map that just doesn't match the territory at all.
Because while the rest of the world seems to be hyperventilating, the Jamaican property market is, well, it's calm.
It's steady.
It's almost aggressively unbothered.
It is operating on an entirely different rhythm.
So that is our mission for this deep dive. We are looking at a fascinating article from Jamaica Homes titled, What Jamaica's Property Market Reveals About Patience, Power, and Perspective. It's dated just recently, February 10th, 2026.
Right.
And we are going to unpack why applying U.S. market logic to Jamaica is, well, it's a recipe for disaster.
I love this topic because it challenges so many assumptions. We tend to think globalization means every market behaves the same way, that a rate hike in Washington, crashes a market in Kingston.
Right.
But this deep dive really proves that culture and history they're essentially structural economic forces.
So let's start with the panic, or I guess the lack of it. In the U.S., when interest rates spike, the market freaks out. Why doesn't that happen in Jamaica? What is the structural difference here?
It all comes down to one fundamental concept: leverage.
Leverage.
Or rather, the lack of it. See, the U.S. housing model is built on leverage and velocity. Most people have mortgages, often very large ones, relative to their income.
Right. You put 5% or maybe 10% down, and the bank owns the rest. You're basically renting from the bank until you pay it off.
Precisely. So the market is highly sensitive to the cost of that debt. When rates go up, the monthly payment just skyrockets. Buyers physically can't afford to sign the paper, so they walk.
And the sellers?
Well, they often have to sell. Maybe they have a variable rate that's crushing them, or they need to move for a job and can't carry two mortgages. They have a monthly nut to crack.
It's a domino effect. One wobbles, they all fall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the Jamaican model is driven by something else entirely.
Which is?
Outright ownership.
Outright ownership. So we're talking about people who own their homes free and clear.
For a significant proportion of property owners, yes. No mortgage. The source material highlights this as the critical differentiator.
How does that happen?
Well, many homes in Jamaica were built incrementally over years, or they were passed down through generations.
That completely changes the game. If you don't have a bank breathing down your neck every month, you don't have to sell.
And that changes the psychology of the seller.
Yeah.
In the U.S., a seller often thinks, I need to sell this in 30 days or I'm in financial trouble.
Yeah, the clock is ticking.
In Jamaica, because of this high rate of outright ownership, that financial urgency is often just completely absent.
There was a quote in the article from Dean Jones, the founder of Jamaica Homes, that I thought was perfect. He said, in Jamaica, ownership changes the psychology of the market. When people own outright, time becomes an ally, not a threat.
That is such a profound shift. Time is an ally. In a leveraged market, time is your enemy.
Absolutely.
Every month the house sits empty is money, lost taxes, insurance, maintenance, interest. You are just bleeding cash. In Jamaica, if the house sits, so what? The owner is unbothered. They can wait.
This leads us right into the second big realization I had reading this. The psychology of what we call a stale listing.
Oh, this is a big one.
In the U.S., if I see a house on Zillow that's been there for 90 days, let alone 6 months, I immediately think, what is wrong with it?
Right.
Is the foundation tracking? Is it built on a sinkhole? It's a distress signal.
You assume the product is defective because the market hasn't snatched it up. But in Jamaica, a lingering listing isn't necessarily a sign of distress.
So what is it then?
The source argues it's often a declaration. It's the seller saying, I know what this is worth. I will sell when I am ready, and not a moment before.
When I'm ready. That is a power move.
It is. The article uses this great analogy. It compares the Jamaican market to a long chess game where nobody is willing to sacrifice their queen for a quick win.
I like that. They aren't going to drop the price just to close the deal before the quarter ends.
And you have to understand the cultural context here to really get why. In the U.S., a house is often a stepping stone. It's an investment vehicle. You buy the starter home, you build equity, you sell, you upgrade. We treat homes like ATMs.
We do. We're always checking the Zestimate to see if we got richer while we slept.
But in Jamaica, property is viewed as insurance.
Insurance? Insurance against what?
Against uncertainty, against displacement, against economic instability. It's a safety net. If you have land, you have a place to exist.
I see.
So selling that asset below what you perceive to be its value, it doesn't just feel like a bad financial trade. It feels like a loss of security.
The source used a really heavy word for this. It said selling low feels like surrender.
Surrender. And think about the history. We are talking about homes that were often built room by room by grandparents or parents.
Okay, let's pause on that room-by-room concept because that's
Yeah.
something very specific to the region that I don't think everyone understands.
It's the incremental build. You don't borrow $500,000 to buy a finished product. You buy the land, you save cash.
Right.
You build the ground floor. You move in. 5 years later, you save more cash, you add a second floor or a veranda. There is literal sweat equity and generational memory in the concrete.
It's a life's work. It's not just a transaction.
Exactly. So when an analyst from New York looks at the data and says, oh, inventory is sitting, prices must drop, they are applying financial logic to an emotional calculus.
They're missing the point.
Completely.
Yeah.
They're underestimating the sentiment. A Jamaican seller will wait years for a price that feels right because the land is their legacy. They aren't going to cash out for a discount just because the global economy is having a hiccup.
So we have these stubborn or, let's say, principled sellers who are holding the line, but markets take two sides. What about the buyers?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
If sellers aren't budging and interest rates are high for those who do need loans, shouldn't the buyers just disappear? Shouldn't demand just tank?
You would think so. That's what the textbook says would happen. But according to the source, the demand is still higher than the supply.
Really? Even with the gridlock?
Yes. The challenge in Jamaica isn't that there are too many houses, it's that there are too few. There is a genuine insufficiency of entry-level homes, middle-income housing, and, rental stock.
So even if the market feels slow, the pressure is still upward.
Correct. You have population growth, you have new households forming, and crucially, you have strong interest from the diaspora.
Ah, the Jamaicans living abroad.
Right. The UK, the US, Canada, these are buyers earning in stronger currencies. Pounds, dollars.
So they're not as bothered by local interest rates.
Exactly. They might be buying with cash or financing from abroad, and they want that connection back home.
Okay, so the buyer pool is deep. But are they acting the same way? Or are they panicking like the U.S. buyers we talked about earlier?
They aren't panicking, but they are changing their behavior. The source describes it as recalibrating.
Recalibrating. What does that look like on the ground?
It means the frenzy is gone. They aren't just throwing money at anything with a roof. They're asking much, much better questions. They are becoming forensic.
Forensic. I like that. Like they're investigating a crime scene, but it's a 3-bedroom bungalow.
A little bit. Instead of just asking, how big is the yard? They're asking about the title. Is the title clear?
Which, as anyone who knows Jamaican real estate knows, is a huge deal.
That's a massive deal.
Oh, absolutely. Fragmented ownership, family land disputes. It can be a real mess.
Exactly. So buyers are checking titles. They're looking at infrastructure, how are the roads, what's the flood risk. They're checking commute times into Kingston or Montego Bay. They're scrutinizing build quality.
So it's less about I can't buy and more about if I'm gonna buy, I need to be absolutely sure this is the one.
Precisely. Dean Jones had another great insight here. He said, Jamaican buyers don't disappear when things get uncertain. They slow down, they ask better questions, and then they move with intention.
That word intention stands out. It's not the frenzy of the U.S. market where you have to make an offer within 24 hours or you lose the house.
No, it's a slower, more deliberate process. And that applies to financing, too. First-time buyers locally are facing constraints with loans, sure. But the desire to own remains intact. They might delay, they might save longer, but they don't just walk away and decide to rent forever. The goal is still ownership.
Now, I want to play devil's advocate for a second.
Please do.
We've painted this picture of the powerful, patient seller and the intentional buyer. It sounds very noble, but is this patience always a good thing? Because it sounds like the market could just freeze up if everyone is just sitting on their hands waiting for some magical number.
And that is the danger. You've hit on a critical nuance. The source calls it the seller's paradox.
The seller's paradox. Unpack that for us.
So patience gives you power, right? You don't have to sell.
Yeah.
But if you have too much patience, you become invisible.
Invisible. How so?
Think about it. Even in a slow market, fresh inventory gets attention. But if a property sits on the market for 2 years because the price is unrealistic, even by Jamaican standards, it becomes stale.
Right.
Buyers stop looking at it. They filter it out of their searches.
They assume the seller is just unreasonable.
Exactly. The seller thinks they are being strong, but actually, they're just stagnating. Their strength has become stagnation.
Right. There's a very fine line between knowing your worth and just being delusional.
A very fine line. And this is where the source argues that real estate professionals, agents, valuators are actually critical.
To be a reality check.
Yes. Their job isn't just to list the house. It's to help the seller understand the difference between wise waiting and, well, just plain stubbornness.
So the market rewards realism?
It rewards realism that's anchored in context. It doesn't reward panic, but it doesn't reward fantasy either. If you are priced right, even in a slow market, you will move because that supply shortage is real.
But if you're priced for the year 2030,
You're just going to sit there.
this really brings us to the core mission of this deep dive. We started by talking about how misleading U.S. headlines can be when you try to apply them to Jamaica.
It's the concept of imported panic.
Imported panic. It sounds like something you'd get taxed on at customs.
It does, doesn't it? But it's a real problem. We consume global media. We watch American news. And we subconsciously import their anxiety. The article argues that trying to read the Jamaican market through a U.S. lens is like using a speedometer to measure patience.
Using a speedometer to measure patience, that is a fantastic image.
Isn't it? It gives you numbers, right?
Mhm.
A speedometer gives you data.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the wrong tool for the job. It completely misses the point. The metrics are just wrong for the culture.
So let's break down that comparison one last time to make sure it sticks. In the U.S., a buyer walks away because
Because the market is commoditized. Another option will appear next week. The inventory turns over fast. If I miss this house, there's another one 3 streets over.
And in Jamaica, a buyer walks away because
Because the right option takes time to surface. They are looking for a forever home, a legacy asset, not just a stepping stone. They aren't looking for a transaction. They are looking for a foundation.
And on the seller side, in the U.S., sellers respond to what?
Mortgage pressure. I can't afford this rate, or my mortgage is underwater. In Jamaica, sellers respond to life transitions.
Life transitions? What do you mean?
I'm getting older. I'm moving to be with grandkids. I need the cash to start a business. It's life-driven, not bank-driven.
That distinction, life-driven versus bank-driven, that really explains why the Jamaican market is so resilient.
Mhm.
It's not that it's immune to economics, it's just that the economics are buffered by this thick layer of cultural value.
It's a feature, not a flaw. In a fast-paced, hyper-connected world, especially in the West, we tend to view slowness or inefficiency as a problem to be fixed.
We want everything to be liquid.
We want liquidity, we want instant closings, we want algorithms buying our houses.
We want speed.
But in Jamaica's case, that slowness, that stickiness, is what prevents a crash. It resists rapid collapse just as much as it resists rapid correction.
It hums rather than lurches.
Precisely. It bends, it adjusts, but it rarely breaks. And for an investor or a homeowner, that stability is actually incredibly valuable. You know your asset isn't going to drop 20% overnight just because the central bank made an announcement.
It brings us back to that idea of intergenerational insurance. You know, reading this, it made me think about how we view our own homes in the U.S. and Europe. We are so obsessed with the property ladder.
The ladder is a huge part of our identity.
It is. You buy the starter home, you leverage the equity to trade up, you move every 7 years. It's restless.
It's transactional. We are always positioning ourselves for the exit.
But looking at the Jamaican model, there is something very grounding about it. It's about the land, it's about the history, it's not about checking the market value every morning to see if you're winning.
It's about dignity. The source touches on this property as a form of dignity. When you own it outright, nobody can take it from you. That provides a psychological safety that a leveraged asset simply cannot provide, no matter how much it appreciates.
That's the real takeaway for me. It's not just about real estate economics, it's about what we value.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's recap the big takeaways for anyone trying to navigate this market, whether they're buying in Kingston or just watching from abroad.
Sure. First, don't believe the global hype when it comes to local markets. Jamaica is defined by low leverage and high ownership, which insulates it from the interest rate shocks you see elsewhere.
Second, the psychology is different. Sellers are patient, not desperate. Time is an ally. Don't expect lowball offers to work just because the global economy is shaky.
Third, buyers are careful, not gone. There's a supply shortage that keeps the floor under prices, but buyers are doing their homework. If you're a seller, you need to have your paperwork in order because buyers are looking closer than ever.
And finally, that seller's paradox. Patience is powerful, but only if it's realistic. You can't just wish a price into existence.
And remember that final thought from Dean Jones. Real estate in Jamaica is about understanding the country, the people, and the pace at which trust moves.
The pace at which trust moves. That is such a great line. It's not about the speed of the transaction. It's about the speed of the relationship.
And in a small island nation, relationships are the market.
So here is the question we want to leave you with today. We live in a global economy that is absolutely obsessed with speed, liquidity, and leverage. We want everything instant. But looking at Jamaica, we have to ask, is the so-called inefficiency of that market actually its greatest safety net?
And if we viewed our own homes as intergenerational insurance rather than leveraged assets, how would that change the way we live? How would it change the anxiety we feel when we look at the headlines?
Something to think about the next time you see a for sale sign that's been up for a little too long. Maybe they aren't struggling. Maybe they're just winning the chess game.
Maybe they are just ready when they are ready.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you on the next one.